quite a bit that. All right. So, welcome to all of you. The reason why I chose this topic just was because it was easy. Next week is Thanksgiving, and we will be taking a break for the holiday so that you can spend that time enjoying your family and enjoying being grateful. And hopefully, you will enjoy those things. But you can also spend a little bit of time perhaps putting in practice some of the things that we look at today together. Okay, so uh, for a lot of us, we don't really think about gratitude throughout the year. It's not something that we think about often. It might be something that comes up spontaneously. We might be grateful for something that happens in our life or for someone in our life who shows up for us in certain ways. Some people do cultivate gratitude by keeping a gratitude journal. So I'm sure all of us have heard about this. This is something that's very come to the forefront in the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years. And then others still will practice gratitude without keeping a journal. So they might spend their evening in gratitude and before bed, perhaps enumerating and identifying the things that they're grateful for. Okay. And these are really beautiful things to practice, absolutely beautiful things to practice. I'm not a journaler, at least not at this point in my life, so I don't really do the journaling. But a lot of the time when I have experienced gratitude, it's come up very spontaneously, like a lot of other things that come up for us, like thought and feeling. These things tend to show up on their own. And when that happens, for me, what I can tell you about that is that it's much stronger than if I were to be sitting and saying, okay, I'm grateful for central air and running water and, all of the, food, clothing, shelter, and all the things that I have. And, I'm grateful that my car hasn't broken down or, whatever it might be. Um, Sitting there and doing it as an exercise can be useful for you if you're in deep mental trouble. Absolutely. But for a lot of us, we might find that we're in states of trouble, and then we come out of them, and then we go into if we're practicing mindfulness, we'll see that we have periods where we feel great and periods where we don't feel so great. And a single day can have thousands of these ups and downs and fluctuations because our mind is a mind. It's many minds coming and going, coming and going. Okay, happy mind comes and goes. An unhappy mind comes and goes. A confused mind arises and falls away. So this is such as the nature, of the mind for a lot of us who've been practicing and able to observe this mind. And when we put our focus and attention on something like gratitude, it can feel a little bit like an activity that we're doing to try and help ourselves feel better and perhaps even spiritually bypass something that feels difficult. So, from my experience, I know I've done this. Some of you might recognize that you've done this too, where you've had a rough time, and then you actually go and put your mind towards something that you're grateful for to try and make yourself feel better. Okay. Maybe for those of you who are on screen, you can give me a show of hands if you know that you've done that in the past, right? Okay, so pretty much everyone has their hand up. Okay, that's great. So you can recognize that this is not just a practice, but it's a way that the mind uses to try and make itself feel better. Okay. And I want to talk a little bit less about that today, and I want to talk a little bit more about gratitude and what a little bit of what my research has shown me. So my research will encompass I've looked at a little bit of science. Also, I've looked at what's come up within the Buddhist teachings. And the reason that I'm going to talk about that is a few reasons. One, this is the Mindfulness Society of Canada, so mindfulness comes from the Buddha and the Buddhist teaching, so we're going to look in that direction. But also, I find that if we're looking at a way of life, then the Buddha's teachings are really about how to live skillfully. At the core of it, it's about how to release your heart from suffering or how to release suffering from your heart. And then when we look in a broader context, there really is this feeling of like how to live skillfully. And so I often will look from that perspective to the Buddha's teachings because I've never seen anything in there that was bad advice. Okay, so they're trustworthy words and trustworthy teachings. And then I'll talk a little bit about, interspersed here and there, I'll talk a little bit about my own experience and so my personal research, which is the research of one person. So just me, but maybe you've had similar experiences. So this may be something that you might feel can be shared. Okay, so some of that might resonate with you. So we'll start a little bit with the science. I've taken a couple of notes down here. So you'll hear some scientific words in a moment. Okay, so from the science, what does science teach us about the practice of gratitude? Well, it says that gratitude can strengthen neural pathways. It can strengthen those pathways specifically for joy and for resilience, which is useful. It can reduce cortisol, which is a bad drug, boo, and it can increase dopamine and serotonin, which are good chemicals in the brain. Yay. Okay. So those are some nice things to hear. And then we also have found that it can enhance sleep, immunity, motivation, optimism, and social connection. Okay, so who doesn't want those things? Okay, there is an absolute ton of research out there. So what I found was when I was looking at the research, I was just inundated. And at a certain point, I'm like, okay, I read through things and I'm done. Basically, the research shows that gratitude helps with everything, basically. Okay, so I'm not going to go on and on about it in terms of the science, but I will pose the question here. So why don't we practice gratitude, or why don't we practice it more? And it's kind of like anything, right? It does take effort and it takes our action. And then if you look a little bit deeper, you'll find that it also doesn't guarantee happiness. And that's also true. So I saw that in the science as well. So there were studies done with recently divorced people who kept gratitude journals, and it didn't increase their happiness at all. Okay. So, I mean, if you're recently divorced and you're just trying to, grateful for this and grateful for that, I can see how that doesn't increase your happiness at all either. Okay. And there was another study where they looked at children and adolescents who wrote thank you letters to people in their life who helped them. And they also found that action, that activity, didn't increase the happiness of the children and the adolescents. It did increase the happiness of the people who received the letters, but it didn't increase the children and adolescents' happiness, probably because they were told to do it. So it was just this activity that they were told to do. It didn't come from the heart. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't something that was their idea. It was something that they agreed to go along with and followed the instructions and then did it and then went on with their day. Okay, so what I can tell from that, from those two studies with the divorced people with the gratitude journals and the children and adolescents writing thank you letters, is that for gratitude, in order for it to help us, it does have to be real and it does have to be authentic. It has to come from the heart. Okay. Um, so enough with the science, okay? I'm sure if I go and look at all the studies, I can find anything I want and, I can claim anything I want when I look at the science. But I want to take a look at the Buddhist teachings, and I found two really interesting things when I looked at the Buddhist teachings. The first was, and I'm just going to read this briefly, the wise show gratitude not to things, but towards people, specifically parents, teachers, and those who have gone out of their way to support us. So this starts to hit home a lot more. Okay, this really does feel a little bit more real and perhaps authentic. It really does, depend on our experience. So sometimes those people in our lives have been very, very good to us, and sometimes they have been maybe even the worst to us. So I'm going to read a little passage here about gratitude towards parents. And I know that, even in my work, every day I talk to people who haven't had the best experience with their parents. Their parents weren't always there for them. Their parents weren't always kind or nice, or perhaps abandoned them. And that can leave an incredibly, incredibly deep wound. And then it can feel very hard to feel grateful to someone whose job it is as our parent to take care of us and look after us and be there for us and feed and clothe and nourish us and make sure that we're safe. And if we don't have that, then those feelings of gratitude do feel like an exercise, or they can feel very much like an exercise. I'm going to read something that is part of, I want to say like one of the suttas, but it's been translated, okay, into English. So these are the Buddha's words. There are two people who are not easy to repay. Which two? Your father and mother. Even if you were to carry your mother on one shoulder and your father on the other shoulder for 100 years, and were to look after them by anointing, massaging, bathing them, and they were to defecate and urinate right there on your shoulders, you would not in that way pay or repay your parents. If you were to establish your mother and father in absolute sovereignty over this great earth, abounding in the seven treasures, you would not in that way pay or repay your parents. Why is that? Mother and father do much for their children. They care for them, they nourish them, they introduce them to this world. But anyone who rouses his or her unbelieving mother and father, settles and establishes them in conviction, rouses their unvirtuous mother and father, settles and establishes them in virtue, rouses his or her stingy mother and father, settles and establishes them in generosity, rouses their foolish mother and father, and settles and establishes them in discernment. To this extent, one pays and repays one's mother and father. So it's really the activity in terms of gratitude is the activity of repaying them and showing that debt of gratitude back to your parents. And in this way, the gifts, the best gifts that you can give to your parents are not tangible ones. It's not about looking after them. I mean, those are wonderful things to do, especially as we observe our parents, if our parents are still with us, getting older and less able to take care of themselves. The feeling is I want to be there for them and I want to take care of them. I know several of you do and have, and done so very well and with great generosity and with extreme gratitude in your heart. And then if you can sit with them and if you can show them what a good job they did in raising you and show them your kindness, your open-heartedness, and if you can allow them to see the results of their work in raising you, that is far, far greater. And it goes the same for teachers, right? So we love our teachers. We want to, some of us have been, I can see on the screen, even some of you here have been school teachers, right? And your students might bring you all sorts of gifts, but the best gift that your student can bring you is to pay attention in class, to respect whatever it is that you're teaching, to be a good citizen in the classroom, and to get along with the fellow students. Those things go so much further than just, bringing you a mug, right? I mean, how many mugs are you going to get, right? So this is one example of when I was doing my research, one of the things that I came across that really struck me. And again, some of us may have difficulty with our parents. They are human after all, meaning they have a mix of virtues and vices. They're human beings. And we do need to go back and kind of zoom out and understand the role that they have in this life that we have right now. Some of you may have been I did a recent workshop called Connecting with Your Guides, and in that workshop, I put up a slide that was very busy, but it had the 32 planes of existence. There are 32 places that our consciousness can land in, and only one of them is human. And so it is considered to be very rare to be born human. It's considered to not only be rare, but it's considered to be auspicious, and it's considered to be a gift and a blessing. And I'm not going to take karma out of that. It's because of what we've done to land here. We've done good things to land here, but we've also got parents who made that possible for us. Without them, we wouldn't have landed here. We wouldn't have the opportunity to be in this physical body as a human being with this, I like to call the mind a Lamborghini, with this very, very intricate, piece of equipment called our mind or our heart, right? And from this place that we live in as a human being, we have the ability to think, to reason, to rationalize, to feel, to discern right from wrong, to choose the high road or choose the low road, right? That's up to us. But without that, we might be in animal realm and in terrible suffering, not able to rest because any predator can eat us at any moment. Or we might be in another, realm that isn't beautiful, that is filled with pain and suffering. We might even be in a beautiful realm and be fighting with other beings, other gods in another beautiful realm. Okay, so that does exist as well, right? So being born in this physical realm as a human being with this ability to have the entire gamut of experience from the most beautiful to the most difficult is actually seen as a gift and a blessing. And again, without our parents, we wouldn't be able to do that. We would have this experience that we have. So whether our parents were, are good, kind, understanding, loving, generous, gentle, or whether they're harsh, mean, have big expectations, abandoned us, at the very least, they brought us into this world. And so that debt of gratitude is seen as inherent. So we can do a lot of good by reconciling with our parents in this lifetime if there's a difficulty. And we can do a lot of good if we can show our parents our own goodness. And even if they didn't have a hand in raising us, our own goodness, our own open-heartedness, our own kindness, our own choices that we've made to live skillfully ourselves. Okay, so this is one really important teaching that certainly rings true for me. My own parents are not angels. They might seem like angels a lot of the time, but they're human, right? And there are times where, I think back to when I was growing up, and some of you might know this, some of you might not, but I spent the first 4 years of my life in a hospital bed with like in a cast from my chest down. And my dad took a job where I think he was running a gas station, like he was working at nighttime so that he could be with me during the day. And my mom was working during the day. So she would come after work and spend time with me until I fell asleep, right? And so when I think of this, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind how they were able to organize all of that and be good parents and then still have still have the energy to bring another child into this world, my little sister, right? And they found time to take us on vacations every year. We would get in the car and go and drive across the city, or we would go on a plane and travel to another country or another continent. So when I feel that gratitude, I'm not thinking about the times that they were mean to me or the times where they might have said something that offended me. In those moments, that momentary consciousness that I possess as a human being, as my birthright as a human being, is sent towards something that feels extremely wholesome and very open-hearted. And that gratitude is, like I said earlier, it's spontaneous and it's true and it's authentic. So this is something to recognize. We don't need to do an activity around. We don't have to try and really hurt our head to try and be grateful to our parents, but we might remember a couple of things that they did for us. In my case, a lot of things that they did for us, but for some of us, maybe it's just a couple of things that they've done. Okay, and that gratitude can spring forth really easily and really automatically. And we'll do some practice on that today together. Okay. The other teaching that I found on gratitude is that it is one of the greatest blessings, according to the Buddha. And again, he taught that having this gratitude in our heart is a skillful way to live. And if we have time today, I might read that sutta, but it might take like a minute or two to read it. So I'm not going to read it right now, but I'll read it later if we have some time. And for anyone who's interested in seeing it, you can send me an email or a note, and I'll be happy to forward it too. Okay. Okay, so that's my, research out there. Okay, research with science, that's my research with the Buddha's teachings. Okay, and then there's my own personal experience, right? I talked a little bit about my experience with my own parents. But from my own experience, I found that being grateful for things doesn't last too long, right? Because there's always this feeling that that thing that I got can go away any moment. It's like, when you get a new phone, right? The first day, yeah, there's confusion because you have to figure out how to use it, right? but there's this happiness that you got this new toy, and it can do so many new things. But then how often do we see that gratitude for that thing, that physical object, last? It doesn't really last very long, right? And so I found that in my own experience, I don't really even consider that to be like a gratitude. It just feels like, okay, there's this new thing going on, and I'm going to be happy for a few moments, and then, it's just going to be normal. It's just going to be the normal way of things. The other thing that I was talking about gratitude towards people. So in there, there's parents, there's teachers, and then there's those who go out of their way to help us. And just this year in February, I'm in a group where, like, from my high school, okay? And there are people who've gone to my high school recently, and people who've gone to my high school even before me and during my time. So it's kind of like an online group. It's a social media group, and I go in there every once in a while and I take a look at, sometimes the teachers will put up pictures of the students back when they were allowed to do that, take pictures of the students. And sometimes there's, people thank others, and sometimes people congratulate others for their accomplishments and things like that. So you can see where your fellow students, have made their accomplishments in their life. And one of the students was asking about a teacher, and she couldn't remember his name. And he was a science teacher, and she said, I really want to know how to reach him. And I forgot what his name was. And I just, and I knew exactly who she was talking about. And so I told her who he was. And he's in his 70s now. And he's still substitute teaching. So his email is out there on the TDSB, you can find it. Um, so she prompted me to remember a time when I was in his class, and I decided spontaneously to write him a thank you note. And I thanked him for not only being a great teacher, but to teach with an open mind and to expect a lot from his students, to push his students, but also to be a really great person. There was the time where he was teaching us, I can't remember what he was teaching, probably inertia. And you remember those long erasers that look kind of like baguettes, like those long ones on the chalkboard? And he took it, I think he was trying to throw it to the back of the room, but he ended up hitting a light fixture. And in those schools, they have those giant, like, they're like egg cartons or whatever. Like they have those plastic white, and they have like the squares where the fluorescent lights are above. Anyway, he hit the light fixture, and the light fixture crashed down on the tables in the middle of the class, like the lab tables, and all the students were terrified. And he went and hid behind his lab table at the front of the room. And we were all laughing. And then he came and cleaned everything up, and the class was having a heyday with that. And then a few minutes later, after he cleaned everything up, um, the vice principal walked in, and he just kind of does his rounds. He walked in, and like everyone was sitting there just trying not to crack a smile and look studious and look like they were paying attention to a lesson. And he was red-faced, completely red-faced. I remember that. And he just went on teaching. And for just a brief moment, like we were all in on something together, right? And it felt really lovely. And he was also the one teacher. I was very shy in high school. And I remember our grade 11, 12, whatever it was, OAC, our prom. And I remember I was standing in the corner with a huddle of my girlfriends, and he came over and he said, "They have this dance." And he didn't give me a choice. He just grabbed me and he gave me like a big twirl, and we danced for like, I don't know, 30 seconds or whatever. But um, it was just really lovely of him to do that, because I think he knew that, I needed to get out of my shell a little bit. So I wrote him this thank you letter, and I sent it. I just wrote it. I told him about a couple of things I remembered about him. I sent him the letter, and I felt really bright for like a day or two. And then my mind went to, I wonder if he got the letter, and I wonder if he read it, and I wonder if that was his email address. And my mind got very busy. And then maybe 3 days later, I got a response from him. And he remembered that moment when he threw when he threw the eraser. And what was really interesting was in that moment, he described that moment so vividly, like it happened yesterday, because for him, time froze, and he saw himself, and he saw his fear and his shock. And he remembered seeing himself standing at the front of the class, like mindfully. He wasn't a mindfulness teacher or a practitioner at all, but in that moment, the way that he described that moment when he wrote me back was so clear, and so it was so vivid. And he said, "Thank you for reminding me of that moment, because I'd kind of forgotten about it until now." And to me, it felt very special because he had that moment of awareness that I would call mindfulness, but he might just call it, whatever, a moment where he was able to see what was going on. And so that meant a lot to me, because in that moment, I might have reminded of him of something in a way where he might not have remembered it on his own. Okay, and so he felt very grateful. He said, thank you for reminding me of those early days in his teaching career." And yeah, he was very happy. And I'm very happy even thinking about it now. So you can probably tell from my big smile that it actually makes me feel really bright and happy to have connected with him, and to have had the experience of being able to thank him and knowing that he's still around and he's still teaching. So for me, I also feel that gratitude is in its highest form when it's expressed and when it's paid forward. So it can be expressed and paid forward to people and not to things, right? So there's some ways in which we can relate our gratitude to mindfulness. And there's like 3 or 4 things that I wanted to share with you about that. One is, because you can see how happy it got me, even just remembering just now, practicing gratitude or bringing something to mind that makes you feel very grateful can be like a samatha practice. So a samatha practice is when your mind is unhappy, it can make the mind become more happy. When the mind is scattered, it can allow the mind to become more concentrated. When the mind is busy, it can allow the mind to feel a little bit more calm. Okay, and so this becomes a beautiful precursor to our formal mindfulness practice. Okay, so we can start off our mindfulness practice with that as a form of a samatha, okay, or in the place of samatha. Another way that we can relate it to mindfulness practice is through contemplation, which sounds like thinking, and it is thinking. Okay, so contemplation is thinking, but thinking about something that is wholesome versus something that is just regular thoughts. Okay, so when we hear in Buddhism about contemplating the body, or like our own death or something like that, right? So those are maybe more somber things to contemplate. And I'm sure you don't want to hear me contemplating about like times when I've seen my skull like all dried out in death and that kind of thing. I'm sure that's not exciting or interesting, and maybe too gross to talk about here. But if we're contemplating our blessings and including like our parents and our teachers and our community, then this can be a beautiful companion, I would say, to our mindfulness practice. Okay. So maybe you're out for a walk, and during that time, you might be contemplating something that makes you feel very grateful. Okay, so this can be a beautiful way to, I would say, complement your mindfulness practice with something that is wholesome. And then even during our mindfulness practice, so feelings are one of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, right? And gratitude is a feeling. It's felt. It's something that we feel inside, right? And so by doing that, we can notice that we're seeing the truth of this body or this mind. When we're allowing that gratitude to come up, we're seeing the impermanence of it. I was talking about how, gratitude for certain things doesn't last. And then gratitude for other things, you can see the shift of that impermanence. The mind felt one way in one moment, and then a different way in another moment. We can see the truth of non-self, how when we're able to practice gratitude or contemplate gratitude, that it's not something that is us, that it comes up within us, and it's not something we control, right? So we can use it as an element of observing the feelings. And then one other additional way, and as I mentioned, gratitude is in its highest form when it's expressed and when it's paid forward. So we can use gratitude as something that fills us with energy. You might find that when you feel gratitude, you feel fueled by that energy. And then you can take that energy and put it towards some kind of positive action, right? So when I feel gratitude for something that I've received, or maybe it's a teaching or help from a friend, then I feel much more propelled and encouraged to take that forward and feel more generous with my time, or feel a lot of energy that I can spend with somebody where normally I might feel too tired to. You can practice metta better that way when you feel grateful and gratitude is filling your heart. Okay. So those are 4 different ways where I can see gratitude can intersect with, can complement, and can support our mindfulness practice. So I'd like to do a little practice with us just now, so that we have the opportunity to explore what that feels like for us to be able to practice together. Okay. And some parts of it, and take a look at this. So some parts of this might feel like a gratitude journal for you. Okay. It might feel like an exercise, and you're just doing it because Salima's telling you to do it and she's guiding you in a meditation. And other parts of it may hit you in a certain way. Okay. They may feel more special and more authentic to how you would feel about something or someone. Okay. So we'll take a moment just to feel our body sitting here. We can start with our physical body. And we can let our body breathe, and we can let our body be natural, exactly the way that it is. And we might notice the stillness in our posture, and we might notice, even though there's that stillness of the posture, that there's movement inside the body. And if you can't feel movement inside the body, then allow your attention to move towards your breath. And then you might notice movement there. And can we now also feel the mind moving? Certainly when there was a pause, you might have noticed your mind got busy or went to think about something. Or when I asked if you can sense the mind moving, your mind might have gone to search. What's it like for us to have the ability to be conscious? What is it like to be able to think? What is it like to be able to feel? What's it like to be able to know? Do we like it? Do we hate it? Do we resent the thinking at times? So this body and this mind and their movements are all we know. We can't know somebody else's mind and somebody else's body. We can only know this mind that's here now and this body that's here now. What's it like to possess these 2 very intricate and very sophisticated elements? Can we see how they support us? Can we allow even a little bit of gratitude towards this body and mind? So this is turning our attention inward towards this form, this body, and this mind. We can also send our gratitude out towards those who are large figures in our life. So let's turn our attention outward for a moment now to our parents. We might have known them well. We might not have known them well. We might have spent a lot of time with them. We might not have spent a lot of time with them. Can we allow ourselves to feel as though our mother and father are with us right now? Can we recognize that they gave us life? That this life that we've led up until this moment wouldn't have been possible without those two people. This body wouldn't be possible without those two people. This mind wouldn't be possible without these two people. Let's see if we can address them and see how this addressing sits with you. So, to my parents, I am grateful to you for giving me this rare and precious human life. Thank you. I'm grateful to you for caring for me, sheltering, feeding, clothing me, raising me, ensuring my safety, ensuring my welfare. I also see you from my heart as a human being, and I accept you completely. And in doing so, I accept all of the lessons you have taught me deliberately, intentionally, and inadvertently. If I've been open-hearted and generous to others because of your influence, if I've been able to live skillfully because of your guidance, if I've been able to be aware of myself with mindfulness because of your presence in my life, even once, then I thank you for this precious gift. And I ask you to see me as I am. And I want you to be proud of me. And feel free to take a couple of breaths here. Just sense how that feels for you, how that hits you. Does it feel genuine? Does it feel hard? Does it feel complicated? Maybe one parent you have a certain relationship with and the other parent a very different relationship. Or maybe you never got to know them. But know that they existed, and because of their existence, you exist as yourself. Okay, we can come back to our body for a moment, and we're going to move to addressing a few others now. Let's look towards our teachers and elders. So these are those who went out of their way to support us and teach us very valuable lessons. You might have your spiritual teachers, you might have your high school teachers, you might have your kindergarten teachers, or other teachers in your life. Maybe they didn't have the title of teacher, but they were incredibly important mentors or role models in your life. So to my teachers and my elders, I'm grateful to have found you in this life. Thank you for being here. I'm grateful for you teaching me, leading me, being a role model, an example to me, for caring for me in the exact way that I needed and when I needed it. I'm grateful for your presence, for your assistance, and all of the lessons that you've taught me, whether they were done deliberately or inadvertently. If I've been open-hearted and generous to others because of your influence, if I've been able to live skillfully because of your guidance, if I've been able to be aware of myself with mindfulness because of your presence in my life, even once, then I thank you for these precious gifts. Notice how that feels for you. And we're going to shift once again. And this time we're going to look at close people to us. These might be other family members. These might be other loved ones. These might be close friends. So you might think of one or two people who might represent this group, because it might be a large group. But whoever comes to mind, one or two people who come to mind. I'm grateful for having you in my life. Thank you for being here. I'm grateful for your presence, for your assistance, and for all of the lessons that you have taught me deliberately and inadvertently. Thank you for being near when I needed you. Thank you for lending me a hand, a shoulder, for lending me assistance. Thank you for being close. And if I've been open-hearted and generous to others because of your influence, if I've been able to live skillfully because of your guidance, if I've been able to be aware of myself with mindfulness because of your presence in my life, even once, and I thank you for these precious gifts. Notice how that feels. Feel free to take a deep breath here. Exhaling out, let your body be felt, sensed. So there's this physical body still here, still breathing, still functioning. There's this mind still moving, still natural, still exactly the way that it is in this moment, without needing to change it or make it any different than it is. There's one more group that I want to lead us in a gratitude practice for. And I want you to sense what it's like for this one. It might be different than the others. So this is a group that encompasses the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the triple gem. These are the most skillful individuals and the teachings themselves. I'm grateful for finding the teachings of the Buddha, for the Dhamma, and for the presence of the Sangha, so that I may learn the correct principles of practice to free my heart and mind from suffering. I'm grateful to be on this path, whether or not I've practiced well. I'm grateful for your acceptance, your kindness, your open-heartedness, clarity, and generosity in teaching me the way to end suffering. If I've been open-hearted and generous to others because of your influence, if I've been able to live skillfully because of your guidance, if I have been able to be aware of myself with mindfulness because of your presence and teachings in my life, even once, I thank you for these precious gifts. Just notice how that feels. You may not have ever met the Buddha in a past life. You may not understand the teachings perfectly because you still suffer. And you may not know what it's like to be part of the community of enlightened beings because we can't understand the mind of an enlightened being. But without them, we wouldn't have a path to follow. We wouldn't have instructions on how to live skillfully and how to eradicate suffering from our hearts. And we probably wouldn't have motivation to practice. So turn the gratitude inward now. and thank yourself. I thank myself for showing up tonight. I thank myself for doing something that is wholesome, that is skillful. And I thank all who are here for showing up with me, whether I know them or not, whether I've met them or not, because I know that I'm not alone. And if I'm able to practice seeing my heart and mind, even for just one time today, then I thank you for these precious gifts. Okay, so feel free to, in your own time, you can come back. You can open your eyes if your eyes were closed. If you were off camera and you feel a little bit okay with turning on your camera, feel free. Immediately, a few people turn on their camera. Awesome. So let's see if we can just be grateful for this community, this group, this opportunity to practice together, to live skillfully together, to help each other, to support each other, to be a shoulder to cry on if we need it, and to be motivation and inspiration for each other. Because if we didn't have this place to gather on Sundays, if we didn't have the support of our friends here, then we would be lost at sea, probably. So I thank you for being here. I have lots of gratitude in my heart for you being here too. Thank you. And let's do one metta. Okay, so we'll share the merits of our practice with all beings. May all beings everywhere, that includes us, may all beings everywhere be happy, peaceful, and free from suffering. All right, thank you, and namaste. Ooh, I got some big hearts exploding. Grateful for your hearts. Okay, let me get Jen unmuted. There you are.
Thank you so much, Salima. There's not even words when there's so much gratitude. And so thank you for tonight. I'll give gratitude on behalf of everyone. Back to you for making time to open our hearts, not just for all of the things and all the people outside of us, but for ourselves when it's so rare to do, to give ourselves gratitude, and to this Sangha, to this Mindfulness Society, to Jess especially for bringing us all together. As Salima just said, we would all be lost at sea, likely staring into our phones or the TV into some sort of screen. And we're staring into a screen, but there is so much more joy and fulfillment for spending this time together and developing ourselves instead of being lost at sea. So thank you, Salima. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Gratitude is always extra special when we're seeing each other and sharing our hearts together and creating an energy in the world that the world needs right now. So thank you. And as Salima mentioned, it's perfect time because we're about to roll into Thanksgiving in Canada here. So we will be spending hopefully some gratitude and love with our families if we're able to at this time. Otherwise, hopefully this energy that we've created tonight can stay with us for a little bit. And then we are back again in 2 weeks on Sunday, October 19th at 8 p.m. as Jess has chose to celebrate his birthday with the Mindfulness Society. He's taking time for us to share birthday blessings on his behalf with us and sharing a little bit about Buddhism and how birthdays are celebrated with him and Buddhist culture. And hopefully we can all offer him some birthday blessings back as well. And this gratitude, since he hasn't joined us tonight, hopefully we can carry that back with him. So we are back in 2 weeks at 8 p.m. to celebrate Jess. And until then, I hope everyone can carry on this beautiful heart and at least a restful evening or day ahead. Thank you again, Salima. We'll see everyone on the 19th.